Serious, Redditors and arranged marriages. What is it really like? Met my husband on the 9th. Agreed to marry him on the 15th. And were wed on the 20th. Literally said about 2 words to each other, and that was with 5 members of his family present. Been together 13 plus years. It had its ups and downs, like I imagine any marriage would, arrange or not. We are very good together. He tries to make me happy in any way he can. I'm American born, but balance that line between Indian and American. For American boys, I was too Indian. For Indian boys, I was too American. Never officially dated and studied a lot. Went through countless meetings with boys from Indian matrimonial sites and never clicked with anyone. As I reached my 30s, the pressure started to mount. I had pretty much given up on finding someone and had grown content with my work and small group of friends. My father sent me a random profile and said he wanted me to look at it. I was not at all interested. So, I pretended to be my dad and sent an email to his dad. His dad, who ended up being him, responded to my dad, me, that we should talk. So, I send an email to the guy and wait to hear back. A month goes by and I'm like, okay, frick you then. Then, I get an email on the 1st of the new year in 2010. It's him. He wanted to start the year off with me. We talk on email for a bit. Then, the phone. Visit in February. Married in March. We have a 6-year-old son and he and my husband are my world. So, quasi-arranged. And, I'm so grateful to my father for finding this man for me. Finally, something to which I can contribute. I am 27, my wife is 26, we are both doctors and we had an arranged marriage. I may be biased but I think at least for me this has worked out better. I had many social issues and a really low self-worth. I got matched to a really lively girl. I panicked when it started and I nearly ended the engagement because I thought we were so different, how could this ever work? What I was not expecting was how much I would fall in love with her. She awakened my sleeping lively side. She brings joy and fun to my life to the extent that I get depressed if I don't see her face in the morning. I love her totally. If I had been left to my own devices I would never have thought myself good enough for her. Now our life is looking up as I just got a residency and I tend to think that is due to the luck brought to me by her. TLDR. Had an arranged marriage, freaked out a bit in the beginning, now she is my life. This post feels so endearing. Good luck to both of you in your marriage and your careers. My parents arranged an engagement with one of their friend's daughters. It was an international arrangement, so it was a pretty complicated state of affairs with a lot of paperwork. So we got to know each other over a year while the paperwork was getting done. All in all, it's been pretty great. Definitely not without the typical relationship issues. What's really nice about it though is that our whole family is approving of the relationship, so there's a lot of support all around. It's like playing UGR with a store deck you got for Christmas. Sometimes the cards don't seem very good but you learn to work with them and find their strengths. Title of my new self-help book: Marriage is like Yu-Gi-Oh! And it's time to duel. Pretty much everyone in my family had an arranged marriage, so I have a lot of stories, ranging from really happy to very terrifying. I guess I can talk about my parents to start with, and will answer other questions if people have any. This is India, for context, and I am not going to be any more specific, and some details are fuzzed. They were married in the 70s. My grandfather spent a fair amount of time looking for women slightly younger than my dad. My dad was in his late 20s and had been working for over 10 years at this point, including dropping out of college. Since it was a big family he had to support, my mom had grown up in a small village and was about 5 years younger. Since my dad had no hang-ups about whom to marry, he is still a very unfussy person. He said yes to the first person both his parents agreed to. They moved to a larger city after getting married where he was working in the public sector. The details after that are slightly fuzzy, and stuff I've gathered from relatives and overheard people talking and whatever versions my parents told me. My mom had a very utopian idea of what married life would be like, and apparently that didn't work out so well, and she'd be morose a lot, and spend a couple months at her mother's house every year, until I was born. My dad had to figure out how to actually be a good husband. He did not really have any idea of any of this worked. Over the years my dad developed heart problems. My mom went into depression. and there was a lot more yelling. It would always end up being resolved, since ending a marriage is never an option for families like this. There would be days when they plain just would not speak to each other. Sometimes it ended with mom yelling a lot, sometimes not. They never really learned how to resolve issues like adults. Now, it's been decades, and I find they are more like co-workers than anything else. They did an amazing job of raising me and my brother. They have each helped out the other's family at times. My dad paid for college for a few of my cousins. In fact, they always work as a team, albeit slightly dysfunctional, when it comes to things like dealing with problems in the extended family. But that's all that they are. I don't think there's any affection between them at all. They don't go out or do the same things together. They have 2 TVs, talk about anything other than serious stuff or go on vacation. I love them to death, but they aren't the kind of relationship I aspire to. I started watching The Americans recently, and I couldn't help but imagine this is exactly what my parents' life has been like. 2 people made to start a life together in a new place, not really caring too much for each other, but backing out not an option. I'm 26 and coming up on 3 years marriage very soon. Not really sure if I had an arranged marriage per se. I think a more appropriate term would be matchmaking. My family and my husband's family had been friends for almost 10 years, but because both of our families are of the conservative Muslim type, we never met or spoke to each other. When his dad and my dad thought we might make a good couple, we spoke to each other over Skype, with parental supervision. Twice because my husband was attending an out-of-state university. Before I knew it, our parents picked a date for an official engagement and we got married 6 months later. Like all marriages, we have our ups and downs and are generally happy and in love. In the beginning it was weird because I wasn't in love with him. I liked him well enough and I knew that I would fall in love with him give time. It was disconcerting to be vulnerable and have sex with someone I hardly knew. It's hard to explain, but I guess what I'm trying to say is that emotionally I wasn't ready to be intimate with my husband, but obviously hormones. I wouldn't change a thing about how I got married because whatever happened, it's led to the beautiful, supportive, and loving relationship we have today. So my story goes like this. I was in love with a girl pretty much my whole life. We were really close and eventually decided to get married after almost 3 years of dating. It all felt perfect until circumstances got us such that we mutually decided on breaking up. It was the worst heartbreak for both of us. Well, a year from then, my parents told me about this girl they knew and thought if I'd be open to considering her for marriage. I decided to give it a try and my family approached her family. They seemed really nice people and both the parents decided that they wanted to go ahead with the process. So the girl and I started talking and texting and getting to know each other. She seemed amazing as she wasn't being all fake with me and gave me honest answers. We both really liked each other and decided to take the leap of faith and got married a couple of months ago. The love I have discovered with her is something unexplainable. The love I thought I knew with that girl before doesn't even stand in comparison with what I have now. It's still early on, but I'm hoping for good things. Throwaway. I was born over here to a Christian family from a small sect. My marriage was arranged and I, stupidly, consented. I hated her at first. My parents chose her on looks, which admittedly she is very beautiful, but they didn't pick on any other criteria. My wife, whom I've come to love dearly, had never left her home region, spoke only her native tongue, which I speak like an 8-year-old, and had been groomed for marriage since she was young. She couldn't carry on a conversation. She hadn't read a book in 10 years. She had no interests. She was just always present. I freaking hated her. She knew it, too. Then she got sick. Suddenly, I had to look after her. It was terrible. She was in out of hospital for months. At one point, she was in the ICU. Once out and home, she had to recuperate for months. Her parents weren't going to come, so I was left to do everything. I was 27 years old, wiping my wife's bottom, shaving her armpits and washing her hair. I was so angry that I was in the situation, but realized that she was getting the worst of it. As she got better, she would do things for herself and would do little things to thank me. She would buy me little things. She would do nice things for me. It made me feel terrible that I hated this poor woman and she was there doing nice things for me. So, we started dating and I taught her about life over here. That's what saved us. We grew to respect one another. Then because of the dating, we slowly fell in love. But it was a long process and had it not been for her illness, I'm not sure what would have happened. Funny story. My dad had arranged marriage but everyone thought he got married to someone he never met, but he have met my mom before and as far as I can tell they were kinda dating. Same crap happened to me. My parents thought they were getting me an arranged marriage. Little did they know it was my secret GF that I never told them about. They knew. My housemate is an Indian girl living in Ireland and had an arranged marriage last year with an Indian man living in the US. I asked her about it all because the idea was so strange to me. She said she trusted her parents to find her someone good because they knew her better than anyone and would have her best interests at heart. Her parents had an arranged marriage and she said she'd asked her mother if she was truly happy and her mother said she was. So my housemate decided an arranged marriage was the way to go. She wasn't seeing anyone or interested in anyone at the time herself, so she thought why not leave it up to her parents. I think if she had been seeing someone herself it would have been okay with her parents. Although I got the impression they'd prefer she was with someone Indian as opposed to, say, if she started dating an Irish guy. They put forward a few different men, some that she met over Skype, and she rejected any that she didn't like, which was fine. Eventually her parents showed her another man. She talked to him over Skype a few times and decided she liked him and wanted to marry him. They met up in India to make sure they got on okay. I think they had about an hour or so to talk together and that was it. The rest of the time they were surrounded by family and her future in-laws, so they didn't get much alone time. She came back to Ireland and they talked every day on Skype, and then after a few months she went back for her wedding. She's since back in Ireland to finish her PhD, and he's back in Texas. They haven't seen each other in several months, but as soon as she's finished her PhD in September she's planning on immediately moving to the US to live with him. I've asked her what it's like and she said she does love him now and she's very excited for the future with him. Obviously they haven't been married very long and haven't lived together yet, so it's hard to tell just how compatible they are, but she's happy so far, so I hope he's lovely and that they get on well once they're actually together properly. My marriage was sorta against my wishes. I just wanted to finish college first. In my community, girls get married between 18-21 and guys between 24-30. I was already 22 and my parents were freaking out. I agreed to engagement but not a wedding until I finished 5th year of dental college. I was in 2nd year. I come home for Christmas vacation and my parents don't let me go back. Like, they physically restrained me. I threatened to tell my now husband and his family that I was being forced to marry, and for that I was beaten up badly. I never went back to college. I texted with So for few months. The first time I saw him was at the engagement. Technically it was nikah, which meant we were married legally and religiously, but is treated as engagement. The wedding reception happened a year later, after which we lived as husband and wife. I am happy with the man I married, but I am not happy with the way it happened. We are 1.5 years into our marriage now. At first everything was silently a compromise for me, but now I love him and can't imagine being married to anyone else. Child of an arranged marriage here, and holy crap, these descriptions of how they're supposed to be arranged are eye-opening. My grandparents threatened to cut all contact with my recently graduated mother unless she entered into one. Though she had legal residency in the country she was studying in and could have told them to frick off. Everything and everyone she knew was an ocean away, which is why I think she agreed. On paper it looked fine. He was a recent graduate from a top college with filthy rich parents. My maternal family was not as rich, but our name is pretty old and has history in our culture, and my mother's folks had made it seem that she'd be bringing old money and land into the partnership as well to sweeten the deal. She wasn't. Everything was handled between the two sets of parents. She only met him twice before the wedding. What his parents didn't tell her FAMI was that he was a drug addict with severe mental issues. They also failed to disclose that his father made it a habit to sleep with the wives of his sons, and the sons turned a blind eye to this because daddy was bankrolling their lavish lifestyles in exchange. Anyway, once my mother was married and she didn't bring nearly as much money with her as they were hoping for, B, refused her father-in-law's advances, and C, had a daughter instead of a son. The marriage quickly soured. My father showed his true colors as an abusive fuckwit, made her to cut all contact with her family, friends, neighbors due to his paranoia stemming from his mental health issues, and forced her to take out numerous loans to fund his drug habit. She only stayed with him as she couldn't afford the expensive, drawn-out legal battle over me that would happen if she ever tried to divorce him. She did try to plead for help from her family, but they essentially washed their hands of her after the ceremony and were no help at all. She finally did manage to leave him when I was in high school, but not before he attacked her with a knife. So yeah, glad to see that the majority of marriages here seem to be going so well. Wasn't aware they could. I am sorry you've had to go through that crap. I hope your mum and you are doing well now though. I have a friend who's been in an arranged marriage for over a decade. It's not a happy marriage and he's really controlling. She's tried to leave, but in their culture it's just not done and the pressure to make it work is huge. One of the great truths of marriage is often overlooked in our modern world. Successful marriages are not usually about finding your soulmate. If that were true, every person who was certain they'd found them would never part. Successful marriages are about being willing to do what it takes to make it work, within certain limits of course. I suspect more marriages end over small, almost petty things than over serious issues like physical abuse or addiction. Nobody is mentioning the astrology. I know a bunch of arranged marriage couples from India and they all went through the same procedure prior to the marriage. 1. Families conspire and arrange a meeting. 2. Couple meets for 1 hour. 3. If couple likes one another, a very complex astrological reading results to ensure compatibility. Sarcasm. I think astrology is bull. They don't. 4. If couple isn't sure, another 1 hour meeting is arranged. 5. If astrological reading and in-person meetings go well, marriage occurs. 6. Couple has opportunity to say no thanks if second meeting does not go well. 7. In every case I know of, result is a much happier marriage than the unarranged ones I know of, and as a white American, I am forever envious of my arranged marriage friends. At this point, I'd try it, except that my mom keeps trying to set me up with felons. So my parents were an arranged marriage of sorts. It was the early 1970s and they were in a commune. I've grilled my mom a lot about the commune, and personally I think it was more of a cult, a sex cult, really. Anyway, it was the 70s and everyone was sleeping around. My mom and dad had been sleeping together and hanging out a bit when the cult leader decided he wanted to throw a big group wedding for the publicity. My parents were one of the couples to get married. My dad was gawky and awkward and not at all what my mom really liked. Dad just went along with whatever, too stoned to really care. The wedding got a lot of publicity. The local paper covered it, and it was featured, I've heard, would kill to get a copy. In the Italian version of Playboy, their wedding album is hilariously trippy. Dad's powder blow suit, mom's crocheted lace, flowers everywhere. They stayed married for 19 years until my mom just had enough. She finally asked my dad if he loved her, and he didn't, really, or didn't care enough. Still the stoner. I'm grateful my sister and I exist. I just wish my mom had been sleeping with someone else that week. My siblings got into an arranged marriage. Their life is happy enough. I'll probably get in an arranged marriage too because I have the personality of a wet rag. Most of the marriages in my family are arranged. Some of them are happy and some, not so much. As other people have pointed out, arranged doesn't mean forced. I live in Pakistan, so the process for arranged marriages in a place with educated people is something like this. The parents of the guy go to the house of prospective bride and get to know her. Then the girl's parents visit the guy's family. If everyone is satisfied with everything, the guy and the girl get engaged. They can get to know each other, depending on how conservative the families are, or get wed right away. In some cases, the guy-girl has a lot of pressure to say yes to the marriage. It's not always like that though. I've seen more happy marriages than bad. All marriages have their ups and downs and arranged marriages aren't any different. I worry that I wouldn't be compatible with the guy I get into an arranged marriage with. My cousins were in a similar situation. Once they were engaged and got to know their partner, they realized that they weren't compatible. They ended the engagement. If you belong to a family that's not illiterate, they do keep your choice into account. I have an arranged marriage. I'm in my early 20s, born and raised in the Western world, the atheist daughter of white, non-religious parents. I was impregnated due to a forced sexual encounter with someone I trusted, and my family didn't want to break the illusion of having a good family, because good girls don't put themselves in those types of situations. My family knew someone who knew a guy in his 40s, with no kids of his own and no jealous exes, and they arranged to have me date him with the understanding that we would be married by the time the baby came along, or else I'd be out on my butt with my baby. Luckily, my husband's a great man and a wonderful father to our baby, and while I might not be in love with him and would never have chosen him on my own, I care for him and I'm happy. Dunno if this quite counts as arranged, but I'm Orthodox Jewish and met my husband through a deliberate setup with the intent of deciding fairly quickly, by American standards, whether we were marriage compatible or not. My roommate knew my husband, they grew up in the same area, and arranged for us to go out when he was spending a weekend in NYC, where I was living at the time. He was a few hours away by car. Another mutual friend was our go-between and communicated with us between the first few dates about whether or not we wanted to keep seeing each other. After a while we dropped the shotgun and started communicating freely with each other. We spoke online or on the phone during the week, and he drove up to see me most weekends. I only went down his way once, due to the way our work schedules worked. 3 months after meeting the first time we got engaged, and were married about 4 months later. We've been married more than 8 years now and we're a really good team. I'm happy and as far as I know he is too. This time frame and basic arrangement, not having casual relationships, going on blind dates based on suggestion from third party, someone else mediating between the parties until they're more settled, is pretty typical for Orthodox Jews. Some use more formal matchmakers, others rely more on mutual friends. Everyone is always looking out for new people to set up with friends or family. Every time I meet a new single guy these days, I think, would he be good for my sister? The system has its ups and downs. People can get picky about the stupidest things, and it can be hard to meet people if you live in a place without a lot of other like-minded people your age, but on the whole is intelligent and works pretty well. After 4.5 years of being in a relationship with my ex didn't work out, I've decided to give the idea of thought of an arranged marriage under one condition. I see the girl and stay in contact with her and get to know her over the span of a couple years. Actually befriend her and not jump in blind. If all works out, then I'll decide on what my next action will be. I'm going to enlist and hopefully I find someone while I'm enlisted. If not, then I'll have to see what's up with this whole arranged marriage crap. My parents got an arranged marriage. As a forward, I dislike some of the implications in Western society surrounding what that entails. At least with my family, my parents were introduced to each other and decided they liked each other and started dating. They did that for like half a year and then decided to get married. They are very different people, and if you knew them individually you would probably never in a 100 years set them up with each other. The weird thing is, they work so well together when making decisions and stuff, it's uncanny. I asked them once if it's something they had to work at to get to understand each other. They kind of shrugged and said it wasn't hard. It's worth to keep in mind though, what they both have in common is that they are both extremely hard-working, self-sacrificing people. So perhaps to them easy means something different than to you and I. If my future GF fiancée told me I couldn't ride motorcycles anymore, I would probably dump her. My dad did it without batting an eye. They had both been introduced to different people before. They were both not interested in the people they were introduced to. They both had dated before that, as in they saw someone they liked in school or work and hung out and dated. My parents and my relatives and the generation above us all had arranged marriages. For the most part it's worked out. Only 3 people I know have been divorced. Everyone else seemed pretty happy as far as I can tell. It's definitely a more partnership more than anything else. My parents have been married over 30 years. My mom had to get married at 19 because her younger sister had received a proposal. She was upset about it and said no to everyone her parents introduced her to. She finally said yes to my dad, who was the 16th suitor she saw. She had a hard time because she had to give up college to go work in my dad's family business. My dad's family was quite big and they literally had to go to events almost every weekend, and both my parents are pretty introverted. Overall though, they're very happy. My cousins are a different story. Very few of them had arranged marriages and half of them married in their early 20s, and half as us are in our late 20s early 30s and are unmarried. I have a cousin who converted to Islam and married a Muslim guy. That was a huge deal in my community as we're Hindu. I think the elders wanted my aunt and uncle to disown her, but we all refused to do that. Now it's accepted, and because she was an older cousin, it's kinda given us the freedom to marry whomever we want. I'm not opposed to an arranged marriage as nowadays it's mostly introductions and there's not a huge stigma if, say, my younger sibling married first. But it's kinda nice they're vetted by parents first. It makes meeting the parents' family way less scary. From Turkish living in Germany and getting arranged with girls from Turkey, it is really random and a matter of luck. Heard guys having really mixed feelings about it. For one guy, he got a very beautiful girl, but he didn't know her at all, so it felt weird awkward. During one of my Indian co-workers' daily phone calls, his parents sprung the good news that they found him a wife. He got some photos, her number, and a few months later he flew over to get married. He said it's fine and she's pretty good. She eventually moved over and they got a house. Was good for him since he lived in a crappy share home and barely maintained himself. I only met her once, but they did seem quite happy together. Not me, bear with me, but my parents. My mother is not all too happy. If she had it her way she'd get divorced, but for the sake of my two autistic brothers she powers through even in the worst of times. Needless to say, it was a bad decision for her to go through with an arranged marriage. Having said that, if I could be half the parent she is, I'd still be a great father. Great TBH. It's 15 years now. You see, a relationship is first built and both parties have to invest time and effort into it. You don't want to later throw it away because of a misunderstanding or small incidents. So forgive and forget become common. You have a lot invested in it to simply throw it all away. Whether arranged or love marriages, key as always, communication and jokes. If my wife gets pissed, I listen to her and try to make silly jokes so she has to laugh and diffuses tense situations. She thinks I'm another child she has to manage, but definitely don't give up easily. Quite a fair few of my co-workers had arranged marriages. From simple, I know this boy, he is from a good family. Can you please talk to him, till I first met him on my wedding day. The ones which relate to the later statements do not have happy marriages. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.